Really, it winds up being like, well, for this particular business and your audience, like where are they and which channels do they prefer and where are they when they're considering like a new offering?
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Lauren Cox. Today I have with me Bob Goodman, the Director of Strategy and UX at 829 Studios. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks for having me here.
Bob, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about 829 Studios and your unique value prop in the market. What sets you apart?
Absolutely. We are based in Boston. We have a really full suite of offerings from web design to SEO to social to PR. And our motto is logic plus magic, meaning really the data-driven strategy part with the creative and execution part. And another way to put that is, some agencies focus more on the implementation and execution. Some focus more purely on the sort of strategy, like ideation. We really love all those parts of the puzzle, and we think they fit together really well.
So, Bob, you focus on UX and strategy. And one of the things that we think about all the time is how do you describe the psychology behind an inclusive user-centric approach to someone's digital strategy?
So, UX has its roots really in psychology and cognitive psychology and making tech and experiences easier for people to use, really from the start. And it really starts with kind of matching the experience to where people are at in their journeys and their mindset. So it's useful, usable, and engaging right from the start and on an ongoing everyday basis.
So whatever the project is, whether it's web property, digital experiences, apps, it's ultimately being created for real people. So how do you approach user experience as a strategic priority when scoping out and designing a client's projects?
Definitely, Lauren. That's a great question. We have some really thoughtful and thorough scoping tools and a great process to really intake kind of what we think of as 360 information about their business, brand, customers, tech stack, and put that all together with a game plan that if they have gaps in the understanding, we'll solve that. And then also for implementation ready, we can really scope that all out, including the tech stack and our design solutions.
Wonderful. So in your experience then, how do you successfully integrate that human-centered design and personalization into an experience? And, how does that drive the creative solutions that you're preparing for your clients?
Definitely. So some of the practices that we have, we evaluate like all the data that they have at the ready, whatever they have, we ask them to kind of bring it on. And we really make sense of who their ideal customers are, as well as prospects. And we have mapping and narrative techniques for the journey and the personas and how those fit together. So then when it comes to the site and what's informing the design, those are all inputs to really match the market and user needs. And we have a lot of expertise in understanding users from all different backgrounds, real people, as you said. And that's really key to inclusive design.
It's easy for user experience, inclusivity, and accessibility to become buzzwords, though, right? And we can just pay lip service to it. But how do you create buy-in with your clients to that user-first philosophy, and how do you weave it into the fabric of the agency's culture?
What we really want to do is understand the customer's end user and their audiences. And being inclusive means realizing that people come from so many different abilities and perspectives and really factoring that in. So there's really broad reach within their ideal customers and user base. Once we have that, we do that via journeys and personas and flows. And once we have that, we make sure that's going in a really 360 way to the whole design and development team, because a lot of accessibility details really play out also in development and making sure that our tech is really ready for things like assistive devices and people that need other assistive technology, or people that are blind users and therefore they need to navigate differently, or keyboard controls. So all of these nuances, which WordPress and WP Engine are very helpful with, are key to our inclusion and accessibility practices.
Wonderful. So I feel like there's a lot of competing priorities when you are, developing for a client. One of the things that I've been thinking about is like, how important is inclusivity and accessibility for your agencies? And then how do you champion it throughout the process with the client and with your team?
Yes. So one of the things we do is really make sure that we're all aligned on the site goals, and we talk a lot about like what accessibility means. Like, why is that color not compliant? Maybe it is already part of the brand. Can we find an equivalent that matches and that still expresses the underlying identity and goals? Similarly, for UI controls, things like sliders, we need to make sure that it's instrumented so I can sort of tab around it. And these things, they're not really trade-offs, I would say, because they're just foundational, both to having like a compliant site, but also one that really invites people in, includes them. Like it just makes the best business sense. So we really have efficient ways to like tackle those problems and bring people along for them, just in how we think and how we build sites and experiences.
Wonderful. Do you have a favorite project that you're actually including a lot of these principles for inclusivity and accessibility in at the moment, Bob?
Yes. I would say one project we have, a very large environmental organization, and they have such a diverse user base, really, like end users and kids educationally, and then large corporations that they are partnering with strategically for environmental impact. And so that project, the scale of it really made it a kind of favorite, because it's been so many years since they did a real site redesign or refresh or rebrand. And so they have decades worth of content, a lot of great content, but really hard for people to find, like from any background. And of course, that's frustrating to them because they put in so much work for this great content. They're very passionate about it. And so, we use a technology called crawling, and we bring in all the data and we look at it and we kind of curate it, and we just really start making sense of it together, like section by section, site by site, and using CMS tech like archives and tagging just to make this all very findable and a great engaging experience.
So that seems to be like there's a level of like inclusivity in content, but also then some personalization to the user. So how do you see, how do you create an experience that is both genuine and transparent for a global audience using personalization?
Of course, there are many great plugins for personalization where we can kind of know more about who you are and show you that from the jump. And if you're signed in and if you shared information, that's even more to kind of model and make that matching. And then there's also the chance to be self-guided. If we don't know about you, you can tell us really what you're trying to achieve or who you are, and kind of navigate that way, which is absolutely an inclusive content strategy. As you described, Lauren, it really goes into kind of content strategy and design very much.
Because essentially the basic goal, right, of content marketing is to drive organic traffic to your website and then convert them into qualified leads. So as your team builds out web properties and refines your clients' branding through their digital experience, how do you empower them to create more inclusive and accessible content?
One facet that I haven't talked about that relates to like inclusive content and experience is just like testing practices. Right. And we do upfront testing just on kind of simulated prototypes and using Figma. and tools like Listna, which used to be called Usability Hub, where you can watch, you can get a readout on how people navigated the site and the heat maps. So then if there's gaps, like we have the data to show like who and why did they face gaps, right? And what was it about it? And then in terms of informing the content, again, we use data to figure out like what topics are most important and how to make them most relatable. And that's part of our testing practice too in these kind of prototype and simulation environments. And then once deployed, obviously like we have a wealth of signals about what's resonating and why in terms of like the voice of the customer and how that can also help on the prospect and lead gen side.
That's awesome. So, there's a lot of UX UI thought around how we create a digital footprint for a company client across multiple platforms or channels. What would you say the best place for a company to invest their marketing dollars or time into to help accelerate that brand's overall presence?
This is such a great question, and of course, like we all know, like, well, what's the right channel as a whole? And really it winds up being like, well, for this particular business and your audience, like where are they and which channels do they prefer and where are they when they're considering like a new offering, right? And it really varies. Like we see, for example, like a big presence of executives on LinkedIn, not so much on TikTok. If we're going for youth and influencer, we're more there. And then for my focus, like on the web, like it's all good, right? Because it all drives to this destination and hub. So if we're finding the audience in the right channel, then that really sets the stage for the web and the ongoing experience to be incredibly valuable.
Bob, I was wondering your thoughts on a customer that's actually doing UX and UI well across multi-channel. So web, et cetera out there. I'd love you to give me a little bit of a customer example.
Absolutely. Often we find that customers are undertaking a redesign because something about the business has changed, within their customers. They're going after like a new type of customer and they're broadening the platform. And so often the web is the place to start because we need to unpack that brand and business story and that new audience. And then it's ready to receive traffic from channels on a paid basis, kind of going from paid to owned. And so we've had some great success, like in the SaaS space, especially, where there's often some changes. And basically getting this new audience type and new offering and message ready to receive, and then really turning on the advertising and SEO work to pay that off with some fantastic results.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Bob. So I love to finish the interview with one last question. What gets you up in the morning? What gets you inspired, in your work and your career right now?
Yeah, fantastic question. I am someone that loves learning and loves solving problems and loves collaborating. So that makes this kind of work a great fit. Kind of meeting clients where they are, their users where they are, talking it over, making sense of it, getting the insights we need to tackle the problems they face and come up with great solutions. So I'm really like always interested, whether it's a client we've been working with for a long time or a brand new one. It's a space we know well or one that we're learning with our client. That's really fascinating to me. And I love trying to like pass on that knowledge or really learn from other leaders and contributors in our space.
Oh, thank you very much, Bob. That was Bob Goodman, Director of Strategy and UX at 829 Studios. I'm Lauren Cox, and this is Velocitize Talks. Thank you so much again, Bob.
Thanks so much, Lauren, for having me today.